Mike Pounds.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words.
Mike Pounds.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation.
But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated.
One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
I had the best words.
God bless the United States.
Around the nation, DYT Nation, Jeff Walter here with you. Welcome to the show. It's Friday, mercifully so. It's been a long week. It's been a very busy week. It's been a very eventful week. And of course, if you've been watching throughout the week, you'll know why. We have some updates on some stories. We, of course, are going to continue with the Superdelegates. We now know who one of them are. And their bio is pretty interesting. And then we have another superdelegate who was basically admitted, yeah, we don't really care at all what the voters think. And then goes on TV to make the case on MSNBC. So that's always fun. Then we've got lobbyists on the record saying, ooh, yeah, we're kind of scared about Bernie Sanders. This is going to be bad if he wins. So that's why we need to stop him. And then you remember that whole Bolivian coup thing, where he got Evo Morales, the first indigenous leader of Bolivia, got pushed out? Well, it turns out the reason he got pushed out for alleged election fraud, not true. That's going to be interesting. So we're going to get into the details on all of that different stuff. But first, before I do, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Helps if you do so. Also, super chats, always welcome. Member comments, always welcome. You guys get read first whenever we come back from the break. So I want to thank you for participating in the show. After all, it's also your show. You are the TYT Nation. So, all right. Anyway, yesterday, you guys were talking about, COVID-19, coronavirus. And look, it's still, now the WHO, and the reason, of course, I'm not doing clips on this is because I'll get demonetized, but my streams already get demonetized, so it doesn't matter what I talk about in the stream. The WHO says, yeah, it's a pandemic now. And we have idiot in chief. Now, the thing about this is that we were thinking, right? We need to use this to our advantage. Now, I'm not saying like in a muhahaha, stupid way or devious way. But think about it, though. The United States is completely unprepared for something like a pandemic. And I don't want to raise the alarm because, again, more people die from the normal flu. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you don't pass it around to people who, can't afford a vaccine, for example, and that's one of the problems. There were recent articles talking about how, the vaccines, there should be a vaccine for coronavirus pretty soon or is already available, but it doesn't mean that it would be affordable for most Americans. Wait, wait, even Nancy Pelosi came out and said, well, yeah, I don't think it'll be affordable for a lot of Americans. Well, then what's the point? So testing for coronavirus costs about $3,000, just over $3,000, if you do not have health insurance, right? And there even costs if you have health insurance. But right now, there are over 20 million people, Americans, that don't have health insurance, and many more who do have health insurance, but actually can't afford to use it. So wait, we're going to have this, global pandemic, right? That's what they're calling it. And they're saying, hey, if you start having flu-like symptoms and you have been to one of these countries that was afflicted, and maybe you should, get yourself checked out, right, to make sure that that's actually what you have. Okay, well, that's difficult to do if you don't have insurance. And if you do end up having coronavirus that you had contracted from somewhere, then the other suggestion that is made to you is that you basically quarantine yourself for about a month, roughly. Wait, whoa. Now hold on there. wait. So that means no work. You can't go to work. How are you going to make money? 40% of Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency. Do you think that these Americans that are most at risk are going to be able to afford to not only go to the doctor to get tested, but also afford to take a month off work? And by the way, we're talking about some of the people that would be the best carriers for this. Young people, right? Young people who travel, right? Or think about it, college students, right? Take a trip somewhere else, college trip. Or know somebody who came back from one of these areas and caught it. I mean, we don't necessarily know, right? But we have a section of people, of our population, that work in fast food. Now, that would be quite a way to transmit the virus, right? Because these people handle the food, right? And they can't afford to get tested. They don't have insurance. You think people at McDonald's have insurance? You think they can afford to take a day off when they feel sick? No. So all of that points to the fact that we have a disastrous for-profit healthcare system that is not prepared for a global pandemic. And whatever happens with coronavirus, right, it just points out the weaknesses in our system. And so what we need to do is get Medicare for all. We need truly universal health care. So at least you can get tested and make sure. And then also, make sure that there's some sort of job protections so that if you have to do, if you do have to take time off because you're sick, you don't have to come in. And so it is really dangerous. And it's a danger to the country not having everyone covered with a basic level of health care. Now, let's see. There's a lot of good comments from you guys as well. James Watson points out, you don't normally get to keep your job when you request a month off. No, you do not. You do not. Actually, look, one of the closest reports has, basically there's a lot of people that are now under observation about an hour away from me. So that's kind of scary, man. But look, I'm generally a pretty healthy person, but the people that it impacts the most are going to be young people, children, right? And the elderly. And so, even so, you have seen people that were relatively young and healthy still die from this. And so, I don't know. It is a scary proposition, especially for people who don't have health insurance. And of course, not to overstate it, But remember, more people die generally from normal influenza than coronavirus and things like this. So I don't want to overblow it, but I also don't want to undersell it either. And of course, the greatest way to prevent infection is to make sure you wash your hands regularly. Okay. Anyway. Let's move on. We got stories. It's a sports story, so buckle up for this one because it's going to get weird. Recently, MAGA guys exploded at country singer-songwriter Garth Brooks because, well, he had the audacity to wear a jersey with the name of someone MAGA guys don't necessarily like. Now, I will show you that photo right here that was posted to Garth Brooks' Instagram. Take a look. Oh, my God. Sanders. Oh, my God. Sanders. Well, obviously, he must be endorsing Bernie Sanders, right? Who's running for president against Donald Trump, or will if he gets the nomination. Oh, well, turns out, though, no, it wasn't. Notice how, of course, it's the number on it is 20 and not 46. And at the time, he was in Detroit. No, he was not. Garth Brooks was not endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders, but honoring the great Barry Sanders. And now, according to MLive, Garth Brooks told fans at a recent concert in Detroit, "I was lucky enough to be an athlete and wear the same uniform as this guy wore in college. I was lucky to go to school with him. You guys got the greatest player in NFL history, in my opinion, in this jersey. I love this man. He's also one of the greatest human beings that you'll ever get to witness and be with. He's a good cat. It's an honor to wear this jersey tonight." Now, I am a Michigander, right? I'm not even into sports, right? So I'm not a sports fan. I don't pay attention to sports ball. I don't know what the hell's going on in the world of sports. But even I know Barry Sanders as a proud Michigander, right? My dad and I used to watch football together because it was, bonding time with the family. And that was back during the time when Barry Sanders was the running back for the Detroit Lions. So I know that, but apparently Trump fans are so easily confused and quick to anger that they, I guess, confused this Barry Sanders jersey with a Bernie Sanders endorsement. As shown, of course, by the results. Some of the Trump fans wrote on his Instagram, "Gee, is a Democrat socialist? Sanders, WTF, Garth. If this is for Bernie Sanders, I'm done with you. I thought you were a true American that loves our country." Voice exaggerated, of course. More. "Weird that a millionaire would like a socialist. Hey, Garth, are you going to distribute your millions?" I love these responses because, again, Garth Brooks didn't do anything wrong. Garth Brooks is literally sitting there going, "Wait, what? What are you guys talking about? It's Barry Sanders. Like, what is going on here?" I could just imagine, like, the guy going, "What in tarnation is going on here?" And I know he doesn't talk like that, but still. I mean, it's insanity. More comments. "Sanders is a foolish, crazy socialist." I know it's crazy that you want everybody to have health care. And then I love this one specifically because it's like one of those outrage. I can't believe a musician would even talk about anything other than music or do, anything other than sing and entertain me, right? This one says, "Good grief, can't you just do what you get paid to do? Why does it have to involve politics? So sad."
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
We don't pay good money for anything other than to watch you perform. Wow. Look, how dare you? How dare you actually talk about something that's important to you? No. We pay you to dance. We pay you to sing. Dance, monkey, dance. Ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. How ignorant are these people for not, again, knowing who Barry Sanders is and confusing him with Bernie? Again, ridiculous enough, right? Bernie Sanders never played football. And not only that, but there's no actual endorsement. I don't know who Garth Brooks favors politically. I really don't care, right? I just, and that goes to most celebrity opinions, right? But again, going back to some of the comments here, they don't understand the word socialism. They don't get it, what it means, and the fact that, of course, Bernie Sanders is a social democrat. Yes, he calls himself democratic socialist. I know even Bernie Sanders is confused with that term, or he's just adopted it and said, look, this is my version of democratic socialism. And it's basically what Denmark looks like. Denmark, of course, is a capitalist country, but with very strong social safety nets, universal health care, free college, high minimum wages, and one of the happiest countries on earth. So, there you go. If you want to make us more like Denmark, sign me up, man. I'm a favor. Sounds fantastic. But again, I'm getting way above people's IQ level on this. So let me give you some fun responses on Twitter from progressives who push back because, once this was out, progressive Twitter, you know how we do, right? We gotta jump in on this. Drunken Progressive says, so much to unpack. I love these people for not knowing who Barry Sanders is. 2, telling famous people they can't talk politics. Singers have to shut up about politics, but I have to listen to the effing plumber's hot takes? F no. Oh my God, you know what? Remember the plumber guy? Joe the plumber. Joe the plumber. Which, by the way, his real name's not even Joe. It's Samuel Wurzelbacher. So this was the guy that came out around 2008-ish and was like, oh my God, you guys should totally vote for McCain against Barack Obama because I'm trying to open a plumbing business and that's socialism. It's going to hurt. Again, guy's not an actual plumber. Now, look, his career has taken some interesting twists and turns, right? As he was a spokesman at some point, a Republican something or other, tried running for elected office. The latest update is that Joe the plumber works at a Jeep plant as a union member. Oh, how ironic. And by the way, he also gets made fun of and gets called a teabagger by his co-workers. Hilarious. So, look, I just love pointing out that irony, right? It's one of those, where are they now specials? Anyway, so now, going back to tweets here, C. Farrell says, I don't care if you lean left or right. If you don't know who Barry Sanders is, you're unqualified to have a decision or have a say in a decision as important as choosing a president. Chuck Keane says, wait for the Trump tweet tomorrow at Garth. I always preferred George Strait. Oh, these guys have not only are they not very intelligent, but they also have super thin skins. They're easily triggered. Even when it's not even real. Again, I don't care who Garth Brooks supports politically. This idea that we have to care about who celebrities endorse is kind of ridiculous. Now, that said, it is nice to have a celebrity that shares your values. Look, I don't know who the hell Cardi B is. I've never listened to her music. I probably never will. I mean, it's kind of cool that she supports Bernie Sanders. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. But I mean, Dick Van Dyke, right? He supports Bernie Sanders as well. That's wonderful. But look, again, at the same time, it's kind of their business, right? And I don't think we should focus on that or really use an endorsement as a measure of whether or not we should support a candidate. And I don't think that happens anywhere. I don't think people look at it and go, oh, you know what? That guy, Dick Van Dyke, he supports Bernie Sanders. Oh, well, guess what? I'm going to change from Elizabeth Warren to Bernie Sanders. No, that doesn't happen. All it does is say, oh, hey, look, Danny DeVito supports Bernie Sanders. That's cool. I like Danny DeVito. I watched, Sunny in Philadelphia. Great. Or whatever that show is called. I can't remember it right now. But anyway, look, basically, point stands, right? That we shouldn't use celebrity endorsements or even non-endorsements as a way to figure out our candidate. It should be based on policy. But that's, of course, just my take about that. Okay. Moving on here. So let's go a little bit more serious here, and let's talk the lobbyists. And by the way, the Ravaging Wolverine does say Cardi B gave us dog walks, so I appreciate her. No, I told him, again, I like the fact that she is on, supports Bernie Sanders. I'm just saying that that's not the reason that I would support Bernie Sanders. Now, I look, again, to say that, okay, look, endorsement from somebody like that in the industry then opens up their fans to maybe look into the policies of that person. I think that's a net positive. And so, again, it always comes nuanced when it comes to that kind of opinion. But anyway, let's get on. We got more stories. All right. With Bernie Sanders overtaking Biden in new national polling and doing well in matchups against Donald Trump in very key states, the Democratic establishment is now in a panic that a self-described Democratic socialist could become the next president. Even though, of course, technically we already had a Democratic socialist president that kept getting reelected in a landslide, so much so that they ended up having to put term limits in. Yeah, I guess they couldn't handle all the actual winning. No, the same kind of people who didn't like the changes by FDR and even LBJ, which brought us both Medicare and Social Security, are now nervous about Bernie Sanders. Now, federal government lobbyists, these are my favorite people to hear from, the lobbyists, told The Hill on Friday that they're increasingly concerned that a Bernie Sanders presidency could be, quote, uncharted waters for their clients, given the Vermont senator's history of antipathy towards big business and the role of corporate power in U.S. politics. Lobbyist Kevin O'Neill, a partner with the D.C. firm Arnold and Porter, said, quote, in our lifetime, we have not had a presidential candidate so openly hostile towards corporations. Now, understand this. Bernie Sanders is not hostile to business itself. What he is hostile to is cronyism. He is hostile to, along with the rest of the American people, and you can check the polls on this one, the idea that corporations should be able to buy our politicians and subvert democracy. But when your entire business model runs on those things and on low taxes, while you're paying your employees the starvation wage and getting fat handouts from the federal government, contracts, etc., I guess a Bernie Sanders presidency would seem pretty hostile to you, wouldn't it? Because if you're a big billion-dollar business, and I'm talking about big corporations, I'm talking about Amazon, right? Cannot run without screwing their employees over and making them depend on government services and benefits, for example, Walmart, while your executives buy yachts and get gigantic executive bonuses, then maybe you shouldn't be in business. I'm just saying. That's the whole crux of his message. Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck, lobbyist Al Matur told The Hill, Washington is rigged, and it's rigged in part from the wealthy and the powerful. You would expect businesses to have concerns with him. Yeah, that's because he's right. I mean, when you nail it, when you tell people the truth, well, and the truth's not so flattering to some of these corporations, yeah, they're not going to be happy about it. I mean, how can anybody look at Washington and the way that it operates and say, oh, no, it's fine, right? The fact that you have corporations giving massive donations to political candidates who then write and pass legislation that helps those corporations and large donors. I mean, is that not going to look corrupt? No, it looks totally corrupt. And the American people agree. And again, it is that corruption that people notice in their everyday lives. And so several years ago, I think it was 2014, there was a study by Princeton University. And I used to bring this up all the time. And it's still relevant today because it points out what the United States actually is: an oligarchy. And I know, but Dr. Jason Johnson right now is screaming, going, "It's not an oligarchy. It's that, stop being dangerous. That has implications of Russian billionaires and oil companies." No. An oligarchy is basically where a small group of people who are very wealthy based on their wealth make all the decisions. And we do have that under a veneer of representative democracy or a representative republic. So now these researchers concluded that government policies rarely align with the preferences of the majority of Americans. So let me give you an example. If over 60% of Americans favor a wealth tax on the very, very rich, right, in order to fund things like education, healthcare, etc., well, they rarely get it. In fact, they never get it. Now, if special interests, however, and lobbying firms and organizations want to deregulate things like the banks, well, golly gee, that just seems to happen. In fact, that's happened back in 2018 when they started stripping Dodd-Frank and deregulating it. And so now we have deregulation of the banks again, setting us up for another recession, possible global recession, thanks to, things like, I don't know, derivatives and being able to sell terrible, like financial vehicles where they package bad debt up and sell it and speculate on it. Things like that. The stuff that really brought down our economy back in 2008. Well, they get that because guess what? They have paid off the lobbyists have paid off the lawmakers. And so both, and by the way, it ends up being passed on a bipartisan basis. So understand that it's not just Republicans, it's not just Democrats, it's a whole system that's corrupt. But I know Chris Matthews is also now yelling at me and saying, don't call it corrupt. How dare you call our system corrupt? But it is. Now, the study further found that when a majority of citizens disagree with economic elites and or with organized interests, they generally lose. And that's not a surprise. I just pointed out an example as well. For example, we've got background checks for gun purchases. National background checks is something that over 90% of Americans agree with. But we've got massive lobbying from the NRA. Now, the NRA is not a powerful organization, but it is powerful on Capitol Hill because of how much money it uses or spends to buy our politicians so that they never do anything about gun legislation. That's a great example. The elites don't want that because guess what? They make money. And so, moreover, it says, because of the strong status quo bias built into the U.S. political system, even when fairly large majorities of Americans favor policy change, they generally do not get it. Or another way to say it is, of course, the American people, regular people, pretty much have no power to affect actual policy. Whereas the lobbyists and the elites, they have all the power and they basically use it to serve themselves and their own financial or class interests. Now, again, sometimes that does help us because there are times where the will of the elites and the American people do overlap. That happens about 10% of the time. So 10% of the time, if we see something get passed that is generally good, it's because the elites deigned to say, okay, we're fine with that. That's not going to hurt our bottom line. Or we need a PR boost. We need to do something positive. So, we're going to let this one go. And we're going to not lobby against it. But that leaves the other 90% of the time where the lobbyists, whatever they want, and the corporations and the moneyed elite, well, they end up getting exactly what they want against the wishes of regular working people. And so that is an oligarchy. And yes, we do live in one of those. Now, as far as Bernie Sanders, I can see how someone like Bernie makes these people feel very, very threatened. He, after all, wants to take away their power and give it back to these regular working people. In fact, according to The Hill, Sanders has vowed to shake up how the influence world does business with proposals to ban donations from federal lobbyists and corporations and to prohibit the corporate funding of party conventions. That's another reason why the DNC wants to shut him down and make sure that he is not the Democratic nominee using a contested or brokered convention. Unsurprisingly, the lobbyists did not like those ideas, but now they're admitting, yeah, we're kind of scared because Bernie Sanders is doing really, really well, and we're trying to shut this whole thing down. In a memo, decline since Sanders' rise in the polls, lobbying for a monument advocacy warned that the senator's fundraising model, which relies, of course, on small donors, there are no super PACs. No, our revolution is not a super PAC, and they have given no money or spent no money on behalf of Bernie Sanders. So, sorry, Warren stands. That's not going to work. Whereas Elizabeth Warren is actually getting money from super PACs. They have already spent over $5 million on ads in Super Tuesday states on behalf of Elizabeth Warren. But you've got that fundraising model that is incredibly successful. The average donation, I think, is still around $18 to Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign. You also have the million-strong volunteer army, and, of course, national surrogates that are pretty popular, like, for example, Nina Turner. They say that they're a potent weapon against, quote, corporate interests. And that, in fact, they said, Senator Sanders is breaking the mold in presidential politics with every gain he makes in the primary process. And like another unconventional candidate who today sits in the Oval Office, you can throw out the typical playbook for what American businesses should expect over the coming months or more. You know, what's interesting, though, generally business under Trump has been pretty good for corporations. They got their giant tax cuts. They got a lot of deregulation. And look, farming, which agriculture was a disaster thanks to the tariffs with China. And then, of course, you have the massive stock drops that have happened just recently. And so I guess maybe business not doing so well. But for a while, boy, they were. They sure were. And so all this fear-mongering, of course, is coming from these very same companies that have gotten pretty much everything they wanted for quite some time. But now they see maybe the writing's on the wall. Now, here's the funny thing, right? Corporations and the country itself, by the way, did best when you had high marginal taxes on the rich. Like, for example, under Eisenhower, right? The American economy actually built and sustained the middle class. Now, you no longer have that. According to a conservative study that just came out recently, the typical 40-hour a week working male, right, can no longer support a family on his income alone. You used to be able to do that when there's a strong middle class. And of course, the typical working male has to work 53 weeks out of a year in order to afford the basics. There are only 52 weeks in the year. Women, of course, have it worse. They have to work 66 hours a week, 66 weeks out of a year to be able to afford those. And again, there's only 52 weeks in the year. So they're even more underwater. Families are underwater. There are no one-person income, families in the middle class anymore. It has shrunk. If we actually go back to where you had high marginal tax rates in the rich, and investment in public works, and investment back into the people, well, then we would actually return to a point of where we actually had a strong middle class. But unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of corporate influence and lobbyists that do not want to go back to that system. And they are trying to stop the one person who's going to try to do that. And so that, of course, is Bernie Sanders. And that's the reason why we should support him, because he's the only one who's trying to get us back to that. A time where both corporations and the middle class were doing well. Okay. So, I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back. We got more Superdelegate shenanigans coming at you, including the identity of one of the Superdelegates and the interesting links he has with the Republican Party. So we're going to do that next. Stay right here. Super chats, member comments, shout outs for patrons and channel members. We'll do all that stuff right when we come back. Stay right here, Run the Nation.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Mike Pounds.
Tolerate.
Welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so first, we are going to read off, or I'm going to read off Super Chat from Happy Dude. Well, I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad somebody's happy around here. Says, don't worry, everyone. Mike Pence will pray us out of this pandemic. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers from the great
Mike Pounds.
Yes, indeed. he'll pray away the disease. All right, anyway. We're all screwed. Okay. All right. So, patrons, first, I want to thank Black Reaper X17 and Ramundo Aguilar. So those are patrons. You can sign up to be a patron, of course, and support independent progressive media by going to patreon.com/TYTNation. We, of course, always need your help. Since we don't take big money or have any corporate investors or anything like that, we just have you guys. Like the Bernie Sanders movement, we do not have big money behind us. Okay. Then I want to thank some channel members as well. Let's see. Terry Hampton and Ken Chester. So thank you. You can become a channel member by hitting the join button below as well. Okay. Moving on to try to... I'm not happy. I know. Yeah, we're all not happy. Just reading Happy Dude's comment. Thank you for, by the way, interacting in the chat. You guys are great. Moving on. Superdelegates, go. So recently, the New York Times featured an article in which 93 superdelegates, or party officials who will have a say if there is a brokered or contested Democratic convention, they flat out admitted that they will vote against a person who has the plurality of delegates going into the convention. That's if they don't have the majority of delegates. So the plurality means they've gotten the most, but not the majority. And of course, that candidate who meets that definition so far looks to be Bernie Sanders, who is looking to do pretty well in a lot of the Super Tuesday states, but might still come up short because you've got so many people here that are running in the race. So now it would be a nightmare scenario if it goes to a brokered convention, because these superdelegates say, we're going to definitely not support Bernie Sanders. Even there's even a nightmare scenario out there that the person they would pick, because they don't have to pick someone who's actually been running, they could pick anybody. Now, names like Michelle Obama and Sherrod Brown have been floated, but just to implant the seed of the nightmare, right? And yes, this is a cursed thought. Hillary Clinton. Imagine through all of that, Bernie Sanders comes up with 48% of the delegates, short of the 1991 he needs. And they say, ooh, so close, Bernie. We're going to take that nomination from you and we're going to give it to Hillary Clinton. Oh, dear God. Please no. That would be probably the worst thing to ever imagine. Yeah. So with that in mind, let's go to one of the superdelegates who was profiled by Lee Fong of The Intercept. Now, he wrote about one of them named William Owen. Now, William Owen is a Tennessee-based Democratic National Committee member who is in support of brokered convention. So he had talked to the New York Times. Now he's talking to The Intercept. Now, the thing about Owen is that he's not just a DNC superdelegate. He is also a healthcare lobbyist, okay, and a Republican donor. Wait, whoa. Okay, so here's the details, right? Owen runs a lobbying firm called Asset and Equity Corporation, and they donated to Senator Mike Rounds, who's a Republican from South Dakota, and Senator Dan Sullivan, a Republican from Alaska, and gave $8,500 to a joint fundraising committee designed to benefit Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And that was back in 2019. Mitch McConnell, guys. This guy gave to Mitch McConnell. Now, Mitch McConnell calls himself the Grim Reaper. You know why that is? Because he has killed just about every single House bill that has come to him, passed from the Democratic-controlled House. Now, keep that in mind as we go to the explanation of Mr. Owen about why he also gives to Republicans. He says, quote, I am a committed Democrat, but as a lobbyist, there are times when I need to have access to both sides. And the way to get access quite often is to make campaign contributions. Well, okay, so that's admitting also another thing that a lot of Democratic officials are trying to push back on, right? Oh, what are you talking about? Donations don't influence us at all. Well, William Owen says, no, I'm a lobbyist. Of course they influence politicians. That's pretty much the only way that we get to actually talk to them is write them fat checks. All right then. So now you need access to Mitch McConnell. Now, why is that? What has Mitch McConnell done for you? Nothing. I mean, if you believe in actual Democratic priorities, that's policy, right? Passed again by the House on environmental regulations, banking regulations, increasing the minimum wage, doing something about gun control. Well, Mitch McConnell's blocked all of that. So, I mean, his excuse of, well, I got to have access to both sides doesn't really hold up. Nonetheless, he says, I am a registered lobbyist and I represent clients and they have interest in front of Congress. And by the way, I attend the Senators Classic. Now, what is that? That's a Republican event. And he goes there each year. But hey, guys, I'm a committed Democrat. Oh, now more. He also says that he gives lots of money to Democrats, right? And that's his proof. Like, yeah, I've given to Republicans, but I also give to a lot of Democrats too, and that makes me a good Democrat. Okay, well, let's get into the details on that, right? So now, FEC records do show that Owen had in the past donated to some Democratic candidates. Okay. However, according to these records, in this cycle, he has not donated to any Democratic congressional candidates. Well, okay, we're still in the primary phase, so maybe he'll get out that checkbook and do some, down ballot races, but very likely he will be supporting establishment Democrats like Henry Cuellar, who vote 70% with Donald Trump, or Dan Lipinski, who is somebody who is not in favor of reproductive rights. I don't know for sure. Those are just some guesses that I'm throwing out there. Not exactly your, progressive Democrat. I would be very surprised if he took out his checkbook for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm just saying. But okay, he's also not donated to any presidential candidates this cycle. Now, we do know that he is in favor of Joe Biden and supports Joe Biden and actually hopes that that they get to a brokered convention so that he can choose Joe Biden. Okay, so no, at least we're clear on that, right? Now, Owen, back to his business, is currently registered as a lobbyist for Clocks Technologies, which is a medical company. Another reason, of course, why he would be against Bernie Sanders and Medicare for All is because his clients would lose money under that system. So, now, what's interesting here about all this? So this guy's a superdelegate, wants a brokered convention, but there is this BS that's floating around that I want to just address right here. Some people are saying, well, look, you're against superdelegates now. Bernie Sanders is against superdelegates now. But what about in 2016, where he was in favor of superdelegates? In fact, he supported the changes to the superdelegate system, and he should be fine with what we have now and not be complaining. Okay. And they'll point, of course, to Bernie Sanders saying on video, hey, the superdelegates, you should support me. But wait, that's a half-truth. And it's something that, by the way, Elizabeth Warren has been pointing out as well. It's a half-truth. And so the reason is, and let me explain. So now, yes, he did come out and say the superdelegates in my state, the states that I have won in the primary, should back me, right? And not just allow these superdelegates to do whatever they want. And what makes them super is they're unpledged. Now, last presidential cycle, primary, we had a problem with superdelegates being reported by mainstream news as already being pledged to Hillary Clinton, when in fact they were still unpledged. Now, that gave the appearance that she was way, way ahead in the delegate count and that Bernie Sanders had absolutely zero chance. So, look, that was one of the problems with superdelegates. Now, Bernie Sanders says, I don't want superdelegates to be around, but if they're going to be around, well then, look, I poll better against Donald Trump, and I won these particular states, so the superdelegates from those states should back me. Now, that's a sensible position because it still honors, of course, the will of the voter. However, no, that's not what happened. Now, later on in 2018, the DNC Unity Reform Commission decided that they were going to do something about this and try to eliminate superdelegates. They pushed and they pushed and they pushed. And in the end, of course, you had the DNC, you had Tom Perez, and people that are superdelegates or were in favor of the superdelegate system. They outvoted the Sanders delegates. And so what they got was this change, which changed it from the system in 2016 to the system that we have now, where superdelegates can come in the second round if there's no plurality. Or I'm sorry, if there's a plurality but no majority, if they don't hit that 1,991 number that they need in pledged delegates. So now that sets up a system. It sets up what we're seeing today. Democrats that have absolutely no path to the nomination. Somebody like Pete Buttigieg, no path, right? He's won one state, Iowa, and just barely, right? But he's not going to win South Carolina. He's not going to win anywhere in the South. You have Elizabeth Warren, who hasn't won a state yet. She is staying in. And it's because now she has a super PAC, but there's no viable path to her nomination. She's not even winning in her home state. New polls come out where Bernie Sanders is now beating her in Massachusetts, according to a new Boston Globe poll. He's at 25%. Now, she's at 17%, but if she falls any further, for example, if he does really well in South Carolina and she does really poorly, she could fall below the threshold of getting any delegates in her home state. That's 15%. So, I mean, she doesn't have a path to the nomination. What is she still doing? Brokered convention. Amy Klobuchar, no path. Brokered convention. The only person that actually still has a path, believe it or not, even after losing the first two states, is Joe Biden. He is expected to do pretty well in South Carolina, if not first or second. And, well, of course, unfortunately, he also doesn't seem to have a plan for Super Tuesday. And so I guess Biden, he's the closest to the person who might have some sort of path to the nomination, but it is looking like Bernie Sanders is going to go to the nomination, who's going to walk into Milwaukee with the most pledged delegates. But with so many people in the race splitting it up, including Elizabeth Warren, well, it is possible that this is a situation that's going to happen. And it's, of course, people like William Owen are like, hell yes, that's exactly what we want to happen. And that is, look, what's going to happen, if there is, it's going to break the party. It's going to destroy the party. But people like William Owen and other lobbyists who are going to lose some of their power if Bernie Sanders does win the nomination, they want to make sure that this does happen in order to preserve that power. They want to risk, and this is what the New York Times was saying, intra-party damage. They think it's just going to be a little intra-party damage, right? No. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a riot. If they steal the nomination from someone with the most votes and say, hey, all that stuff that you did throughout this entire primary, all the volunteering, all the door knocking, all the donations, didn't mean a damn thing. They do that and actually subvert democracy, the entire Democratic Party will be nothing left but ash when it's over with. They will not be a party anymore. I can guarantee it. And they are willing to burn down their own party in order to stop Bernie Sanders. It's amazing. As one of the people in the chat here, Ravaging Wolverine says, it's mutually assured destruction. I couldn't agree more with that. Okay. One more story on this. I'll try to make it a little bit quicker. An MSNBC guest is under fire for saying that the voters don't actually choose the Democratic nominee and don't really have much of a place. I'm going to show you this video featuring Anton Gunn, and then I'll break it down.
But this idea that perhaps Bernie Sanders is moving the goalposts a bit when it comes to delegates and what could go down at the convention in Milwaukee. What say you to that?
Well, I will say that Bernie is moving the goalposts. This is what people need to remember. The Democratic Party has a party. The party decides its nominee. The public doesn't really decide the nominee. The public gets to vote for President of the United States, but people who are active in the party, who participate in the party, they decide the nominee. Superdelegates are very influential in the party. Also, delegates are very influential. And just because you're a pledged delegate for Bernie Sanders or a pledged delegate for Joe Biden doesn't mean when you get to the convention floor that you'll stay a delegate for Biden or Sanders. That's a process. And so it is a process to pick the candidate who wants to be the standard bearer for the party to try to win in November. And so Bernie got to understand that process. And it's a real selective and detailed process. In 2008, the Obama campaign from the very beginning focused on the delegate process because we knew it all was going to come down to the delegates, who's committed to you, who wants to be on your team at the end, and do you really feel like they can be elected?
So basically, party elites. Oh, great. You know that whole small d democracy thing that we pretended that we cared about? Yeah, we were just kidding. We were kidding about that. No, if we don't like who the majorities pick, the majority of people, well then, or at least the plurality of people, we're going to choose someone else who more represents our interests. Because, we don't really care about what the people actually think. Oh, those plebeians. How dare they pick somebody like Bernie Sanders? Oh, man. That's essentially the argument, by the way, for superdelegates, that voters are too stupid to be able to pick their own nominee, so that the elites have to come in and do that. Now, he didn't say that directly, of course. He's just saying, well, it's a process. It's a process. But why does that process exist to be in the first place? It's because they don't trust the electorate to choose a nominee. They don't want the electorate. They don't want the voters to choose people. They want to choose themselves. But of course, they do hide it with the veneer of democracy. But at the same time, they set up these rules like the superdelegates in order to, if they don't like that choice, to be able to take it from them. So look, understand, they never intended for the public to have as much power as they do now, by the way. And they do now, thanks to Bernie Sanders and the Sanders delegates from the Unity Reform Commission. Our friend Namiki Konst was on that, and she fought to get rid of superdelegates. But unfortunately, as the vote went, there weren't enough votes to eliminate superdelegates outright, but were able to blunt their power and really put them towards the second round if there is a brokered convention, the second round of votes. So there's still a situation where you could have a brokered convention and these superdelegates can come in and steal the nomination. Whereas back in 2016, they were already able to do that in the first round. So understand that's how this is, right? So now Mr. Gunn's comments prompted a little bit of backlash. Here you have Sanders speechwriter David Sirota tweeting this. So apparently the new line is the public doesn't really decide the nominee. Well, that's great. I mean, you just tell all those volunteers out there and all the people that are donating and knocking on doors and really, investing their time and not just people like Bernie Sanders, but there are people that support Elizabeth Warren. There are people that support, Pete Buttigieg. I don't know who, but I mean, there's got to be somebody other than the people in the wine caves that support Buttigieg. All of their efforts also mean absolutely nothing if we have a system like this, where they can go and choose whoever they want. And some names floated, of course, were Michelle Obama, Sherrod Brown, Chris Coons, Mark Warner, people that aren't even running and hadn't even won a state. That is an insanely stupid system. But it is a system where he's saying, well, that's what we have, and there's a process. No, we shouldn't have that process. We need to get rid of that process. Now, Sean King on Twitter also said, these comments were utter foolishness. Quote, I can hardly believe he formed his lips to say this out loud. And why wouldn't he, though? They're brazen about this. They're honest about this. This is the system that they want. This is the system that they love. And they don't care about reality, right? They don't care about voters, about wanting about the will of the voters. And the will of the voters so far seems to be Bernie Sanders, who has won the first, was won New Hampshire. Buttigieg is saying that he won Iowa, but it's super, super close, whatever. Nevada, Bernie Sanders pulled out a win, and it's very likely that Bernie Sanders can do fairly well in South Carolina, blowing out everybody in California. He's set to do very, very well on Super Tuesday. And so it seems like the voters seem to be backing Bernie Sanders. And so it's very likely that he will get the most delegates. But if he doesn't hit 1991, then, well, you're going to have the superdelegates come in and do whatever they want. Democracy. What democracy, right? Where the people pick? Oh, no. We're going to allow some voting, but no. We're going to limit it to candidates that we think are safe and pre-approved. We don't want those plebs voting in somebody who would challenge our power. Oh, please, I do declare we must make all the decisions. It's crazy. You know who doesn't have superdelegates? The Republican Party. It's funny when the Republican Party is actually more Democratic than the Democratic Party. And of course, here's what they did with this entire situation. Donald Trump Jr. came out and criticized not only him, but also Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Were able to criticize the Democratic Party for doing this. Never give those guys ammunition. I mean, seriously. You're giving them ammunition. And then, of course, this helps only Donald Trump, especially if they do take the nomination. You say, oh, look, see, that's the exact swamp that I've been trying to drain the whole time. And see, the Republican Party is actually representative of our voters. But look at the Democrats over there. What a disaster. You're helping Donald Trump. And so they don't have superdelegates. And now I've actually heard this argument from Democrats. But like, if they had superdelegates, they could have stopped Donald Trump. Well, there's no guarantee of that. I mean, under Trump, they've done pretty well. I mean, the Republican Party has done pretty well. In fact, when he was elected, not only did the Republicans have the House and the White House, they also had the Senate, and they got 2 Supreme Court picks. And they've got numerous, thanks to Democrats, by the way, a lot of judicial picks. And so now the judiciary is now fully stacked in favor of Republicans, in favor of conservatives for decades. Well, wonderful. Okay, congratulations, right? They won. They went with populism. And so maybe, I don't know, that's kind of a winning strategy. Maybe we should do something similar, but with actual progressive populism and not fake populism like from the right wing. With somebody who actually does want to help the American people. I know it's so crazy. Get out of here, you crazy person, you. But no, let's actually do something that's smart and not stupid. Let's not listen to people like Mr. Gunn, who are the anti-Bernie elite. By the way, back in 2015, this guy has been an opponent of Bernie Sanders for quite some time. He said that Bernie Sanders sounds angry all the time. Well, if you're, I don't know about you, but if you were a regular person and you're not angry, well, you must not be paying attention of what's going on. The only people right now that are not angry are people who are comfortable. And we all know who those people are. All right. Not only that, but more importantly, Mr. Gunn is part of a board member of the group, the Democratic Majority for Israel. Now, that group is an AIPAC-affiliated organization, and they have aired multiple attack ads against Bernie Sanders in Iowa and Nevada. So this is a pro-right-wing government of Israel group, right? And so understand, they support Netanyahu, they support the right-wing government of Israel, and they're attacking a leftist Jewish candidate. So just understand that, right? Just kind of absorb that. Now, how did we find out about this anyway? Well, it's not as if he told people on MSNBC. He did not. No, he did not disclose that relationship on MSNBC. And so that's kind of interesting, right? That we had to find out by actually looking into him. Now, another thing is that Gunn has said, this is back in 2019, he told that Michael Tracy that Bernie Sanders should have never been allowed in the Democratic Party. Quote, he's never been a Democrat till it became politically expedient for him to say, I'm a Democrat. He chose to be an interloper. I wonder, has Mr. Gunn actually, and this is Anton, I almost said James. James Gunn is fine. It's Mr. Anton Gunn, right? I've never heard him criticize Michael Bloomberg for not being a Democrat. Because Michael Bloomberg is literally a Republican. And by the way, Michael Bloomberg is one of the guys who wants a brokered convention desperately. Not because Michael Bloomberg wants to win. It's because Michael Bloomberg wants to stop Bernie Sanders. And the reason, of course, is that he doesn't want his taxes to go up. I mean, that's simple, right? Yeah, I don't want my taxes to go up, so I'm going to blow up democracy and stop the person with the most votes from getting the nomination. And I'm going to, along with Mr. Gunn and the rest of these superdelegates, make sure that this doesn't happen. Make sure that Bernie Sanders never wins the nomination and that we get someone who is pre-approved to not raise my taxes, or somebody, of course, who is a milquetoast centrist that is going to absolutely lose to Donald Trump. That's the plan. But does Mr. Gunn criticize Michael Bloomberg? Of course not. Because they have the absolute same goal to stop Bernie Sanders. Now, I don't know if Gunn wants to stop Bernie Sanders to protect Bloomberg's taxes. No, I don't know that. Maybe he actually is concerned, oh, what if this guy loses to Donald Trump? Well, you should probably know better because there are access to polls. Nonetheless, maybe he just doesn't read polls. Maybe he knows absolutely nothing. I don't know. But you would think that he'd know that Bernie Sanders is different than Michael Bloomberg, who was a Republican, as I said before, and then was an independent, and then joined the Democratic Party to run as president. Unlike him, Bernie Sanders has caucused with the Democrats forever, served as a member of the Senate Democratic leadership. And in fact, that's currently his position. He's in leadership for the Democratic Party. And he's also running for president as a Democrat. So that's again, this whole thing's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, the person that gets the most votes should obviously win, meaning if the superdelegates actually cared about democracy, that they would back Bernie Sanders in the states that he won, even if he doesn't get a majority of the superdelegates or majority of the delegates going into Milwaukee. That would actually better represent the will of the people, or, as Bernie Sanders had tried to do previously, just eliminate the superdelegates completely. Oh, but then, of course, people like Gunn and people like William Owen, who I talked about in a different segment, these lobbyists, these corporate lobbyists, well, they'll lose whatever power they have. And they of course, cannot have that. Unfortunately, what you have here in the Democratic Party is too many people with financial and political interests that only care about themselves and not representing the average American voter. Okay. All right. That's all I got. Well, it's all I got time for. Anyway, I mean, just kind of give you the gist of the story in Bolivia. Turns out the OAS, the Organization of American States, got it wrong. They said that there were election irregularities in Bolivia during the October 10th election. Well, an independent analysis from the Washington Post found out that no, there were no irregularities. Evo Morales won the election fair and square, but was overthrown by the military anyway. And now, of course, there is a right-wing government in Bolivia setting itself up, of course, for American corporations to come in and basically take their resources. So that's the situation in Bolivia in a nutshell. And it's really a shame on the media who jumped in the false narrative of these elections, of course, being rigged, right? Which they were not, or these results being fraudulent, which again, they were not, and reporting these irregularities from the OAS as fact. They're not fact. The OAS lied because the OAS has always been with a mission to overthrow leftist leaders in South America and install right-wing authoritarian regimes that are open to American corporate exploitation. That's it. So that's in a nutshell. All right. Anyway, thank you guys. Love you. Please like and share the stream. Please, I want to thank everybody, of course, for watching. Please subscribe if you like this content. Please become a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation, and help our channel continue to support itself. Without you guys, this goes away. This doesn't exist. So do that. Channel memberships as well, all that stuff, merchandise, etc. Please support us. That's all I'm asking. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, Nation. You have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.